This is the beginning of Unit 9, Quadrilaterals, and we're going to run this unit just a little bit differently. Instead of using your notebook, we're just going to go through 3 lessons that you'll use paper from the front of the classroom. So for today's, you're going to need a blank flowchart, and then some markers or colored pencils might also be nice for this one. Maybe start with a pencil, but then maybe go back and add color, or you do whatever works for you. All right, so quadrilaterals. We're going to write that down as our title, Quadrilaterals. I think we spelled that right. And you'll notice that we're going to learn about 7 different quadrilaterals. On your flow chart, there's 7 different ones to learn about, and all of them have these 3 things in common, okay? We're going to write that maybe just off to the side here. We'll add another spot. So all quadrilaterals have 4 sides. All of them have 4 angles. And because they have 4 angles, their interior sum is always going to be 360 degrees. So that's true for all 7 of your quadrilaterals. Okay, now we're going to go through and we're going to talk about specifics for each of these 7 quadrilaterals. We're going to start with the first one, which is a parallelogram. And we've already actually learned about parallelograms in Unit 8, so we'll go through this one a little bit quicker. But parallelograms, they have 2 sets of parallel sides. We're going to use these little arrows to mark it. They have 2 sets of congruent sides, like so. They have diagonals that bisect each other. I'm going to use 3 marks and 3 marks, 4 marks and 4 marks. Okay, and then I think just a couple more things here. We know that opposite angles are congruent. And then we got these opposite angles are congruent. And then we also know that adjacent angles add to 180 degrees. And that's going to happen all over the place. It's going to happen there, and there, and there, and also on top. I'm not going to add that one there because I'm kind of out of room. But any 2 angles that are next to each other are going to add to 180. So I'm just going to add that somewhere where we have some room. You guys might have more room than me. I'm going to do adjacent angles are supplementary. Just so we have a little vocab in here as well. And then maybe just remind yourself that these are the diagonals. There and there. Okay, I think that's it for parallelograms. I'm just double checking my notes. Yep, that looks good. Okay, now as we move down the flow chart, each of these shapes is going to keep everything from above. So our first one is a rectangle. And our second one here is a rhombus. I'm going to switch colors though. I'm going to make that blue. So a rectangle and a rhombus. Okay, now they keep all of the green stuff. So I'm just going to go through and I'm going to redo everything from above. I'm going to go as fast as I can here. Try to not make this video an hour long. So it's got that. It's got those. I'm not going to mark those just yet though. And then actually, I'm just going to stop right there because the rest of it is kind of special stuff. Okay, so a rectangle, I'm going to switch colors. So these are the things that are unique to a rectangle. A rectangle is going to have 4 right angles. And then in a rectangle, the diagonals all are congruent and they bisect each other. Okay, so the things that are new all four angles are 90 degrees and your diagonals are congruent. Okay, and then again, still have all the properties from the parallelograms. So like these two angles add to 180 and these two angles add to 180. I'm not going to mark that because we're kind of out of space. But it makes sense. If they're all 90 degrees, then any two next to each other are going to add to 180 degrees. So the new things are that you have the right angles and your diagonals are congruent. Okay, rhombus. Rhombuses have a couple special things. They have all of the green things. So I'm going to go in and do those again quick. I'm not going to do that quite yet. Okay. And then unique things to a rhombus are that rhombuses have all four sides congruent. I got to get rid of this little one that I did here. I don't want that guy there. Okay, all four sides are congruent. Your diagonals intersect at right angles. Okay, and then your diagonals bisect your angles. We're going to make sure we write that down too. So we have all this information. Okay, so things unique to a rhombus. Where are we going to write this? Right here. We're going to say all sides congruent. Diagonals are perpendicular. I'm going to use that symbol for perpendicular. That's right here. And then your diagonals also bisect the angles. And then again, all of the things from up above from the parallelogram are still true. So those are still equal to each other. I'm going to do 2 marks. Those guys are still equal to each other. Adjacent angles are still supplementary. Okay, and then squares. Squares are like the most specific shape of all time. They have all of the things from above. Okay, so we have 2 sets of parallel sides. We have diagonals that meet at right angles. They bisect each other, so these are all the same. Our sides are all the same. It's all the stuff that we've done put into one diagram. Okay, all of these are 90 degrees. So you decide how you want to do the colors here. I'm probably not doing the best job. Since your diagonals come through and bisect your 90-degree angles, that means that each of these little chunks are 45 degrees. Squares are just super duper symmetrical. See if I'm missing anything here. I think we got it all. Yeah, I think that looks good there. All right, moving on to kites. This guy here is a kite. It looks like a kite. Kites are kind of fun. Kites have diagonals as well. So from corner to corner and from corner to corner. And then what happens there is this guy and this guy are congruent, but this long one and this shorter one are not congruent. They're going to be different. Kites have one set of congruent angles, and that's really, those guys are perpendicular, so we got a right angle there. But that's about it. So kites have one set of congruent angles. And then we have this perpendicular, diagonals are perpendicular. And then one more thing I didn't add here. These guys, I'm going to run out of things. Make them 4. Those guys are congruent. And those guys are. congruent. All right, and then moving on to trapezoids. We have a regular trapezoid, and then we have an isosceles trapezoid. Okay, so some things about trapezoids. Trapezoids have one set of parallel sides. Those are called your bases. Okay, B1 and B2. So B1 and B2 are your bases. And your bases are always going to be parallel. Okay, what else do we know? We know that these guys are going to add up to 180 degrees. And these guys are going to add up to 180 degrees. Okay, don't mess with like the bottom two angles though, or the top two angles. There's nothing special going on with those. There's also this thing called the median, or the M. So M stands for your median, or sometimes it's called a mid-segment. Okay, and then there's a little formula that goes with that. Okay, median is equal to base 1 plus base 2 divided by 2. Or in other words, your median is like the average length of your two bases. And we're going to see those, see that worked out later on this unit. But for right now, just get your formula in there. Okay, and then the isosceles trapezoid, it has a couple extra special things added to it. So it has all of the stuff from the regular trapezoid, so parallel, it's got the mid segment, it still has, you know, your base 1 and your base 2. These guys are still going to be equal to 180, but the special part is that these sides are going to be congruent to each other, and then your diagonals are going to do something kind of interesting. This bottom part and this bottom part are going to be equal, and this top part and this top part are going to be equal to each other. So just a little extra stuff there. All right, I think that's it. I know that's a lot, but you don't really have to memorize all of this stuff necessarily. You just need to know that it all exists and then know how to use it down the road.